Welcome, everyone. It's a very special episode here at Not in Hall of Fame. It is an annual tradition, or as we were talking here, it's a sub-tradition? Sub-tradition. In the parking lot. No? Anyone know that? Rush? No? Okay. None of you? I'm the only
Must be a
true Canadian
Canadian
here.
thing.
It is a Canadian thing. But we're not here to talk about the greatness of Neil Peart. We're here to talk about the greatness of the professional football superstars who are ever so much closer to becoming members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025. We're going to do things a little bit differently because we kind of have created what I'd like to call a parallel universe, our version of the MCU multiverse, where we've been sort of going year by year, and we've already inducted some people. But to explain that a little bit further, I am sort of releasing duties here to the great author and Chicago's best historian. Actually, I'll just say America's best historian. It's Jack Silverstein. How you doing?
Hey, Kirk, how are you?
Doing well, doing
I'm
well.
good. I'm good. And why don't we introduce Chris and Jeff? Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
All right, Chris Mouradian. I'm up here in the cold of Wisconsin right now, and looking forward to chatting with you guys tonight about some future Hall of Famers for the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
And I'm Jeff Schlegel. You can follow me at the Jeff Schlegel on Twitter. Try to make her X, whatever the hell it's called now. Try to make it as easy as possible. New year, even better version of me. Let's do this, gentlemen. All right, cool. So, for folks who don't know, Kirk Buchner here and our friend Evan Nolan founded Not in the Hall of Fame, and 5 years ago now invited a number of us on to talk about the Pro Football Hall of Fame every year and to do our own vote. And so we match the actual process. But we do it with our own elections. The way we've been doing this is that we start with our own group of preliminaries, and we do like the semis and the finalists, but we do it with our own group. And then we elect people, and we remove those names, and we also remove names of people who we haven't elected, but the real hall has elected. And I guess eventually we would get to those people, but I guess it just seems more fun not to. So last year, for example, we elected Randall Cunningham and Richmond Webb. We also elected Antonio Gates. We had previously, a few years earlier, elected Devin Hester and Patrick Willis. So our board is a little bit different than the actual board. What we're doing tonight is we're getting our finalist down. And when the Pro Football Hall of Fame made its changes to the process, and they were going to start with a list of 50, we as a group put together, we all submitted our list of 50, and we ended up with 11 players who were unanimous in our group, not counting Richmond Webb, who we had already elected, and a few other people. So we've got a list of 11, and our goal tonight is to create the list of 15, which is the finalist list, and this will move pretty fast. Our list of 11 of people who are already in as our finalists, and some of these names are in the finalist round in reality, and some of them made it to the semis, and some of them are completely off the radar of the actual selection committee. And obviously that's part of the big reason why we do what we do. So these 11 are already in for our finalist round. They are, in alphabetical order, Eric Allen, Jared Allen, Cornelius Bennett, Ben Coates, Rodney Harrison, Torrey Holt, Luke Kuechly, Terrell Suggs, Earl Thomas, Adam Vinatieri, and Ricky Waters. And I then took everyone who failed to meet that group by either 1 or 2 votes, and added in someone who's in his 20th year. And we always want to make an effort to talk about the guys who are in their 20th year. So we are going to elect or move along 4 of the following players. Again, this is alphabetically: John Abraham, Sean Alexander, Willie Anderson, Lomas Brown, Jari Evans, Marshawn Lynch, Nick Mangold, Tom Nalen, Eugene Robinson, Neil Smith, Steve Smith, Reggie Wayne, Kevin Williams, Steve Wisniewski, Darren Woodson, Marshall Yanda. While they're Yanda or Yanda?
Yonda.
Marshall Yanda. All right. So I'll also note that while there are only 4 people on this call, we have already taken votes from 5 of our colleagues, Paul Lawrence, Pierce Conboy, Brian Fry, Ron Katz, and Thomas Hall. So they've sent us their votes. And I think also worth noting is that we can do this pretty fast because, unlike the actual selection committee, we spent a lot of time on this. Is that fair to say? I know that there are 50 selectors. Actually, right now there are only 49, and there's a pretty vast disparity between the people who seem to really be paying attention and others who seem to be sleepwalking through the process. I don't like picking on folks, but that is what it is, and I don't mind saying so. So you know that if I'm open to saying that Jeff is ready to rip some heads off. But more to the point, we have spoken so much that we already have 11 people. Like, we already have a good sense of the ballot. So let's start here. We need to just pick 4 names. All the names I just read are great players, but we've got, I think, 2 20th year people here in Eugene Robinson and Neil Smith. Of the people who have sent in their votes, they already have some votes. So let's start there. Eugene Robinson, Neil Smith, Jeff. When you did your research on Tim McDonald, I think Eugene Robinson came up in that. Tell us about him.
Yeah, when I think about Eugene Robinson, he kind of gets a knock for something that happened off the field that really should have no bearing on the process that we're talking about here. But in year 20, it's a shame that a safety that spent the peak of his career in Seattle, therefore not getting a lot of media attention at a time that Seattle typically didn't. A guy with 57 career interceptions, I believe it's 22 fumble recoveries. So you're talking between interceptions and fumble recoveries alone, that's almost 80. That is a pretty large number for a player to not be in the Hall of Fame as a safety. He certainly holds up well from like a turnover standpoint compared to another number of other safeties that have been inducted in recent years or current semifinalists or finalists, whether that is John Lynch, Darren Woodson. Frankly, his turnover numbers hold up better than Leroy Butler, who, Jack, I know you and I, not to mention Chris, were very big on. He belonged in Canton. He certainly does. But Eugene Robinson was a guy that could do it all. He was great in run support. He was great in zone coverage, really good in man coverage, just versatility all over the place. I know Chris remembers, he doesn't really get associated with it, but he had that 2-year stretch in Green Bay back there with Leroy Butler, and they went to 2 straight Super Bowls and won one of them. He didn't get the attention, I think, frankly, that he deserved for how much that he brought to the table during his time in Green Bay. And if we really want to go there, when you think about a guy towards the end of his career that could still contribute and still do a lot, he played in the Super Bowl 3 straight years. We don't think about Eugene Robinson like that when you add him to that 98 Atlanta team. And as much as it's all about the one off the field thing, that Super Bowl week, it's easy to forget, like, this was a preeminent safety who didn't get nearly the attention that he deserved, kind of like Albert Lewis in some sense.
Well, that's also why it hurt, Jeff. That's why Robinson, doing beyond his team leadership, and I think he had gotten some sort of leadership or community leadership award that
I think he won the Man of the Year award 24 hours before.
24 hours before.
Yeah.
But beyond that character fact, it was also how great of a player he was. They knocked him out. That his action seemed to knock him out mentally. I mean, that's the narrative we put together because of the Rod Smith touchdown, but it wouldn't have been as big of a deal if it was a lesser player. The fact that he was so great, that was what made it so problematic.
Yeah, but then you think about it, even great players, great defensive backs get burned, right? Like, it happens. The timing and the circumstance certainly doesn't bode as well. And to your point, it certainly advanced a narrative about him these past 2.5 decades. But when you look at the totality of the career, and frankly, when I look at a guy in his all-around skills, I would put him above a Darren Woodson, a John Lynch, and I don't mean disrespect to these other guys here, Steve Atwater, I would put Eugene Robinson above all of them.
All right. Well, here's an important note. John Turney, who I think anyone watching this probably knows John Turney, but great NFL researcher, historian on the Blue Ribbon, one of the Blue Ribbon committees this year, so part of the Hall process. He published a piece in 2019 looking at the 1990s all-decade team. And the safeties were Leroy Butler, Steve Atwater, Carnell Lake, who actually we didn't get to, and Ronnie Lott, who probably should not have been there because he was older. And this is what Turney noted. Robinson had Pro Scout Incorporated's, quote, seal of approval for the highest grades of any free safety in the 1990s. So I think the big question here is just doing business the way that we like to do business. Should we just move Robinson in? And then let's pause that. Let's think about that for a second. But here's the other 20th year man, Neil Smith. Anyone want to talk about Neil Smith?
Yeah, I can talk about Neil a little bit here. He's been one of the players that I've really felt through his whole process has just been overlooked. Yeah, he was an all-decade team for the 90s while he was with primarily Kansas City, and then he became the in a lot of people's opinion the piece that put Denver over the top with being able to defeat Green Bay and Atlanta for those back-to-back Super Bowls in the mid to late 90s there. So he's got over 100 sacks from the defensive end position. Only earned one All-Pro, but was named to, I think, 4 or 5 Pro Bowls. He's just one of those players that when he came to Denver, the team became complete. He was the missing piece on that defense there. Do they win without him? Maybe not. He was that important to be able to free up the rest of the line there to be able to harass Green Bay and Atlanta on offense there. So I think he's just a player that, for whatever reason, just has slipped through the cracks, much like Leslie O'Neal did previously. And for a process like this, where we have a chance to dig in a little deeper on a guy who's in his last year, I think it's in our best interest that we do that. We take a look at those accolades, that we take a look at the back-to-back Super Bowls that he comes over and becomes a part of, that he doesn't seem to get the credit from the selection committee at Hull.
And I would layer on here, Chris. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say a couple things here. First, I think it's the little lower sack total kind of hurts him, but that does a disservice to the type of all-around player that he was. Like, I would rather have a defensive end like him that had 30 fewer careers, rather have 104 or so sacks than 135 or 140, but he was a liability against the run. No, he wasn't a liability against the run. He was really strong against the run. And in fact, he was a key reason that Derek Thomas could be in pass rush situations to be able to just go downhill and go get the quarterback, right? Yeah. Like, that's one thing. I think the second thing, it was fascinating to me, and I hate to use the media game here, but I think it does highlight something. In the 90s, Neil Smith was a massive star. And something went wonky along the way. If you remember the Chunky Soup commercials, This guy was playing in KC and then in Denver, but KC before that. Like, he was getting all of this attention for a reason. For those that went through the 90s, for those that watched the 90s, they remember how great of a player Neil Smith was, and much of an impact player. When you go back and watch games, oftentimes they would talk about Neil Smith before they would even talk about Derek Thomas, and they would certainly talk about them in concert. And I've been disappointed that he's not only not inducted, but hasn't even gotten into the room to have the conversation. And that does feel like it's based off the sack totals, and that does a disservice to a really great player.
Yeah, I think along with what, oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, because like Jeff said a lot of what I wanted to say, because I remember like that almost like it was yesterday. That was the player that they would all build up against. And they talked about Smith, I thought, in a lot of games more than they talked about Derek Thomas. And yes, he's got, I say, a generic sack total of like 104. but that's because he could do so much other stuff, and he wasn't necessarily that one-trick guy. Uh, he wasn't just a big star there. He was getting noticed by the electors for the Defensive Player of the Year award. So he was finished fifth once. He finished third once. He was a national star at a much higher level than some people. And it's a great thing that you brought up, Jeff, because what happened? Why is he not even remembered at all?
He won 2 Super Bowls. Like, that's the other thing that kills me, right?
Yeah.
Is you don't really associate him with Denver, but I think those that know ball would also associate him with Denver as much as Kansas City. He's got
He
two.
was it,
Six
it was
Pro
it was
Bowls.
the
Go ahead, Jeff.
defection. It was the defection also within the division from one team that had been on the rise and had a number one seed for in '95, and they were in the NFC title or AFC title game in '93, I think, and they then had the number one seed again in '97. 97, Kansas City and Denver had that shootout for the division, which is why Denver ended up a wild card team, even though they had a great record. And it was Neil Smith, though, who gave Denver that legitimacy. I'll also add from our group that because we've done a few different oops, am I on mute?
No, we hear you.
No, we hear you.
Okay. All right, sorry. We've done a few overlapping exercises for different purposes. One was all right, if we could map out the next 5 years, how would we vote? And I put that story together for Clark Judge. And I'll note that we voted Neil Smith in that exercise. So we have we've got a list here of a number of players. How do we want to do this? Do we want to all just see, unlike the actual hall, we're down for collusion.
That's right. It's strategy. Is that
strategy?
We're just open about it.
Yeah. Silly not to. Is Pierce here?
Yes.
Here.
I just let him in, yeah.
All right. So we'll let Pierce get settled, but I know for sure that I'm voting for Neil Smith. I could go either way on Eugene Robinson, but I do like the idea of putting him in because he's in
and to
year
be clear,
20.
it's putting him into the finalist round.
For the final, so that we can talk about him. That's all it is.
But that's part of the point of the exercise, right? Is we think sometimes the hall could do a better job of guys with these types of resumes at some point in time in 20 years should be brought into the room where the only true formal conversation happens the finalist round. And because of that, I am a yes to advancing both Neil Smith and Eugene Robinson. Too much there for us to leave them out at the last gasp, if you will.
Yeah, I'm voting Neil Smith twice.
Okay.
Yeah, I had Neil Smith as one of my four that I was going to put forth here. I'm fine with advancing Eugene Robinson as well. I think Jeff made some great points there that his career needs to be looked at.
We'll talk more about Eugene too, but yeah, Neil's. Yeah. If I've got to tier it, then it's Neil. But Neil will not get bumped off a list of four for me. Eugene could.
Here's the thing: if we move in Eugene Robinson and Neil Smith, we have 2 slots left. And losing out on Darren Woodson could be one of those. People feel okay about that?
Ooh. Potentially, because when I would look at the resume, I'm sorry, but just the numbers are so much better for Eugene Robinson before I even get into the actual play and what the film and what peers at the time thought. And Woodson's got a little more time versus Eugene Robinson. In our process, it's either now or senior abyss.
Yeah. Okay.
Now that doesn't mean that Darren Woodson is automatically out. We might go through here and be like, no, he does deserve to advance. But just if I had to tier him right now, I would go Eugene Robinson before Darren Woodson.
All right. Looking at the rest of the bracket, or the rest of the group, I know we feel really strongly about Kevin Williams. I think he would have ended up in the unanimous. He was unanimous for a while, and then got some votes that didn't include him. And I know that we've got we definitely feel strongly about getting a center in there. We've got Nalen and Mangold. I know we feel strongly about Wisniewski. And certainly John Abraham is someone who we talk about a lot. I love Sean Alexander, but I can wait on him now, especially because we have Ricky Waters in our finalist group. Yanda will, he'll have his day with us. It seems clear that Willie Anderson will have his day with us. But Lomas Brown is another one who is up there. So how you guys want to do this? You guys want to just send me your 2 votes and I'll add them up and we'll take a look and see how we feel. And is there anyone in that first finalist group that we want to consider removing? Like Adam Vinatieri is a first ballot kicker. I don't know how much I want to like manipulate it, but also
Let's not, I think, maybe because we've already sort of respected all the people who voted for that already at this point. And some of those people aren't here to sort of like defend maybe why they wouldn't want that.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be fair, like this kind of mirrors the real deal process, right? And there are some tough decisions that have to be made. So it puts some like added onus on us to get it right. And I think when I look at the 11, like there's nothing that really like stands out to me like, holy cow, what the hell is everybody thinking kind of thing, right? It doesn't feel like there's any massive outlier that says no, that's foolish. I don't know yet. Do we have anybody else we want to talk about, maybe Jack, before we get down to like voting for the 2? Like, do we want to talk about Kevin Williams? Like, maybe I'll say this. I'm good on Steve Smith and Reggie Wayne waiting.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've got Torrey Holt in our 11, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and then that feels like it'd be silly to advance 2 or 3 of them because we would at most induct 1 of them this time. I'm just trying to think of.
I mean, the ones that I feel strongly about, I do feel strongly about having Kevin Williams in our group because he was so dominant. His exclusion, he can't even reach the semis in the real process. It's bizarre. And, I know that I think Paul and Evan have offered some theories as to why that is.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the name that jumps out here. And he was unanimous in our group for a while. I think so that would be one. I do want to have a center in here.
We don't have any offensive linemen right now in the 11. I just noticed that. So yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm like, I start to wonder, like, offensive lineman maybe, but does it have to be a center? Like, should we be talking a little more about Lomas Brown because he's another like late ballot type of guy, right?
Well, we've also got Wisniewski here, no?
Yeah,
Wiz the other one. Yeah,
Wiz is a big one.
He's in year 19 or year 18? I think 19. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think at this point, just based on who is sort of waiting, I mean, Wisniewski, 8-time Pro Bowl. He's sort of, I call him the Logan Mankins of the Raiders, just like wrong time.
Yeah.
And I think that he definitely deserves a shot. I think he's only been an actual semifinalist 2 or 3 times.
I think this year was the second time.
This was the second. Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was the second or third, but I would be huge on as much as I've really been convinced on Tom Nalen from some beautiful presentations by Tom Hall. Nick Mangold, someone I want to have more conversation about. The clock is ticking on Wisniewski. Right. And we know that. And his resume is, I think it's the top one of any offensive lineman who was in the modern category.
I agree. We saved ourselves the problem because we elected Webb last year. So we don't have that issue.
Yeah, and I look at like the challenge for me with Nalen is I don't know how enthusiastic I would be because I don't know that he would be the best center on this list, just in my opinion. I think Mangold was better. But it's like, does Nick Mangold need to be in the 15? We're probably talking about it more than the actual voters are, so that's a win. I would defer to like either the Wisniewski or Lomas Brown. Feels like we need to at least have one of them in that final 15. I don't know automatically that we have to be both because it shouldn't just have to be all the late ballot guys, but we should at least talk about like if either one of them belongs. Because to your point, Jack, there is something there about Kevin Williams. When like lower sack numbers, no social media presence, but he was the guy. And you and I have talked about this at length before, right? About, when the Bears played the Vikings for years, we didn't worry about Jared Allen. We worried about the Williams wall, and it all started with Kevin Williams. He was the guy.
Yeah.
I don't know, like if you guys had to stack rank Lomas and Wiz, how would you stack them?
I got Wiz higher.
Yeah, they're
I mean-
close. Lomas Brown, he lived in obscurity up there in Detroit for what, about 15, 16 years.
Yeah, and he got hurt a little bit, not necessarily in the Pro Bowl voting over the years, right? Because what was he, like a 7-time Pro Bowler? I think he got hurt behind the narrative. Yeah, he got hurt by that narrative of Barry doesn't have an offensive line, which certainly wasn't entirely true. And Lomas was definitely the standout from that group. Like Lomas was high level. I put him in like kind of the Richmond Webb kind of category, right? Is a guy that maybe wasn't viewed as like all-time elite, but for a long time he was a high-level performer at a premier position, which by the way, and this is where I think I would give him the edge over Wiz, is Lomas played according to the NFL and the way they have viewed it via the draft and free agency and trade for generations.
Right.
Left tackle is by far the most important position on the offensive line. I would choose the elite, all else equal. I would choose the elite level left tackle over the elite level interior offensive lineman. That's just me.
All right. Well, let's bring our friend Brian Fry into the mix here. On his grand list, he has Lomas Brown ranked 340. He has Wisniewski ranked 462.
And did he have Lomas as one of his 4?
He did not. No, he did. He did. Sorry, he did.
He did.
He did. I believe John Turney also had Lomas ahead of Richmond Webb as well. So that's another tough one. And let's see, Wiz, his last year was 2001. Lomas Brown's last year was 2002. So he's got one more year. That's kind of a wash. We're not going to end up electing every single person we want to. And I think what's interesting about what Kirk has designed with the 1946 project is that in that version, where we're able to get to these guys 20 years ago, we will end up electing them. And that, I think, what Kirk has put together is going to end up being like our definitive haul in a lot of ways, because we're going to be able to start it at the beginning of a lot of these guys' eligibility instead of our group started in the class of 2020.
So if I could, just being the chairman of a mock committee is just as stressful.
It's a really good point though. Of the time to put the work in is like years 1 through 15 or 1 through 16, because when you start getting to like 17, 18, 19, 20, like we've seen this past couple of years in our conversations, right? Like we got Albert Lewis in, but we did not get Tim McDonald in. But if we did a better job of talking about him for a couple of years, we probably would have. It's hard to like do that late rally for these guys, Jack. It's a really good point.
So
at this point, though, if we're pushing, who would we push more if we sort of like to want to move forward with that? Wisniewski's already been an actual semifinalist. I'm trying to remember, did Lomas make the cut down to 50? Because the whole thing did that from.
Sure.
Yeah, because like even though I have Wiz over Lomas, I'm kind of fine either way. I just want one of these guys in for sure for us to talk about.
Does Pierce have any thoughts on this? Because I know Jack, you mentioned Brian. I'm wondering if Pierce has anything to add. He may not, but it would be great if he did.
Well, I can tell you this. I mean, Pierce sent us his votes, and he voted for Wisniewski and not for Lomas.
Interesting. He said, apparently my new laptop doesn't have a mic. Oh, that's fun.
I hope your new laptop does have a mic. So, I feel strongly about Wisniewski, but I feel more strongly about Kevin Williams. I would be fine going with the group if, like, the group was saying, let's do Lomas over Wiz, even though the year difference is in Lomas's favor. I would be fine doing that because I feel more strongly about keeping Kevin Williams's name up there because that to me is like a more egregious. That one baffled.
That makes 3 and 4, right? And then we'd have our 4.
That's correct.
Okay, so then after this point, we would then assign, I guess, for an actual presentation.
Well, yeah, we would. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Do we want to do that? Kevin Williams and Lomas Brown?
I'm fine with that.
I think so, yeah.
Jeffrey?
Yeah. Kevin Williams,
All right.
Lomas Brown. I'm good with that.
They're all better than you think, Jeff.
The question is which one is going to be that this go round, Kirk?
Okay.
Great, whatever one I'm assigned.
So
whoever I'm assigned, I know I'm going to get him in.
For what it's worth, I did find that Lomas Brown was one of the 50 that was advanced in the modern era process with the committee this year.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, so with that, those are some hard exclusions, and I'm sure that if we had more people here, and we just put this together late. I think we all thought of it late, and I know I did. But
I don't think there's anything super controversial, though, Jack.
No, I think that's also the good thing about how much we talk is that we have a really good handle on who needs to be where, and we're also not beholden to, like, if you were a finalist this year, now you're a finalist in perpetuity. So let me finish typing out our finalist group. And Kirk, do you have anything to promote while I do this?
Yeah, actually, I'll promote a few things. Chris and I, we do a monthly show, the Elevator Show. We're going to be recording our December show where we do elevator up, elevator down. Who had a really good month and who didn't have a good month that will impact their Hall of Fame case, whatever it may be, regardless of the sport. Check those out. There's always the weekly show with Evan Nolan, the regular Hall of Fame show, where we discuss all sorts of Hall of Fame things. There is the Retro Football Review with Paul Lawrence, where we look at old football games, and sometimes we get some great guests for that. Jack's been voluntold to be a guest on the next show that we're going to record, where we're going to be
voluntold.
You're voluntold.
Voluntold.
Never heard that. Okay. Voluntold. Yeah, it's basically where I'm nominating you, and you're doing that anyway. But he was kind enough to get 2 of his good friends, Jeremy and Jose, who did the last recording show that we did, which was where the Bears lost to Miami in that stellar 1985 season. So on the next one, Jack has been voluntold where he's going to be a guest star for the Super Bowl 20. Actually, Jeff, you should be on that one too.
Yeah, it feels, considering I'm the guy that's wearing, for some reason, the Bears coat.
Are you not? Well, I thought you were both sort of Bears people through and through.
Oh yeah, unfortunately, we got indoctrinated at a young age, and I have done my best to not perpetuate the cycle. I can't say whether Jack is or not.
We are going to look at that, but we're also going to be forced to endure what I'm going to call the ground zero of why athletes think they could sing the damn Super Bowl shuffle. My God.
Oh, what's so bad about that is how many other teams tried to rip that off in other sports. I'm just here to do the Wrestle Rock Rumble. Yeah, review that.
Yep. Oh, well, it's actually inspired another show that's going to start this January called When They Thought They Could Sing, where we're going to be looking at when athletes try to sing.
Are you starting? Is your first episode about Carl Lewis singing the national anthem? And if not, why not?
Carl Lewis actually did something far worse. Actually, he did a whole single with a video that will be featured, but I think the first one will be the Los Angeles Rams response to the Super Bowl shot.
Oh,
Ram it.
Ram it. Oh,
yes.
my God.
featuring the great lyrics, "Ram it. Do you know how to ram it? You can ram it. Ram it."
Oh,
That's the real thing. The Eagles did their thing. The 49ers did one. Oh my God.
I found one where there's the Calgary Flames doing, I don't know what they're doing. I do, it's like country folk. It's just awful. The whole thing is awful. And I blame the Chicago Bears. I blame them.
Hey man, we backed it up.
Well, comparatively, it wasn't too bad actually, because I rewatched that whole thing, and they even had the punter. He was part of it. All right, you get the tambourine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Trendsetters.
That's right. Gotta get the puncher in there. Maury Buford.
Yeah, so yeah, he got to do that. Actually, it was interesting because only 10 of them had lines, and one was the backup quarterback.
No, Fuller. Yeah, especially
Yes.
when you figure that Walter and Jim.
I just had to update the drivers and restart.
Oh, there he
Oh,
is.
here's Pierce.
There's Pierce.
Okay, so Pierce, you want to give us your thoughts? Although I think we've moved on, but you want to give us your thoughts on Wiz and Lomas?
Just had him.
It just can't be.
He is such a tease.
I can sing "Ram It" again.
All right. Well, with that, here is here. One issue actually, as I thought about this with the exercise that we did, was that we used as a starting point here was that we were making our list of 50, but we were doing it based on the actual list of 167. So like I didn't vote for Carnell Lake, even though I would have. I know that I think someone would have voted for Asante Samuel. I think someone would have voted for Asamuga. I think there were a few other names like that. And I think we kind of acquiesced in a way to the voting process because like we all voted for Jared Allen, and Jared Allen has never been, I don't know that he's ever been a finalist in our group. But like I said again, I think that what Kirk is putting together is ultimately going to be the one that we pay most attention to once it's finished, because that represents something that would have been real from start to finish, which is really cool because obviously all of the Hall of Fame voters, they've been doing this for a long run, and they've been ignoring Steve Wisniewski for 18 years. Like we're now up against it because of that, but we're going to elect Steve Wisniewski in Kirk's version.
Presumably.
Much more, presumably, but I would say much more fit. Okay, so here's our list of our finalists, our 15 finalists that we will discuss in January. So this month: Eric Allen, Jared Allen, Cornelius Bennett, Lomas Brown, Ben Coates, Rodney Harrison, Torrey Holt, Luke Kuechly, Eugene Robinson, Neil Smith, Terrell Suggs, Earl Thomas, Adam Vinatieri, Ricky Waters, Kevin Williams.
Okay. So Jack, I assume that we'll pick a date for that, and then you'll assign like you did last year.
Sure. And obviously people can volunteer. Whoever feels the most that they're the best person to present Lomas Brown, for example, that's the person who should be doing it. But there you go. We've got our finalists, and I'm just going to take every opportunity to remind people that there were 798 votes for all pro quarterback from 2004 to 2019. And Eli Manning got exactly 0 of them. So
say that again. How many?
All right, sure. So out of the 798, which included votes for 19 quarterbacks, such as
but with a bunch of current Hall of Fame voters being a part of the AP All-Pro process for years.
That's correct. That's correct, Jeff. A number of current Hall of Fame voters were also AP All-Pro voters during Eli Manning's career.
And they gave him how many AP votes in his 16-year career?
They gave him a grand total of 0 votes.
Is that less than Mark Bulger got?
That is fewer than Mark Bulger, or Carson Palmer, or Carson Wentz, or Michael Vick, or Dante Culpepper. Yeah, yep. Listen, I'll note that Ben Roethlisberger also received 0 votes, but Ben Roethlisberger won a passing title. I'll note that Troy Aikman only had 10 votes, but that's 10 more than Eli had. So it's not everything, but obviously he shouldn't be in the finals right now. It's a big problem, especially when we've got voters who are unaware that the math has changed.
Big Ben also had Brady and Peyton to contend with for most of his career in that same conference. Eli didn't quite have that. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, here you mentioned conference. I mean, here's another fun one. So
what stat? What's the only major passing stat that Eli Manning led the league in, and he did it 3 times? Can you tell me again?
Interceptions.
That's not good, is it?
That's the bad one. That's the bad one.
That's the bad one. Okay.
Yeah. And to his
Wait
credit,
a minute, that's not fair. You were just talking about how good Eugene Robinson's interceptions were.
here's another good one for you. So again, 2004 to 2019, and obviously the significance of that is Eli's career, meaning that it's skewed toward, in his favor. So in something like this, Brett Favre isn't getting his 3 MVP seasons. Peyton Manning isn't getting 03. Kurt Warner isn't getting 99-001. NFC Offensive Player of the Week. In Eli Manning's career, he had that 4 times. Aaron Rodgers had it 4 times in 2014 alone. Cam Newton had it 4 times in 2015 alone. The leader for Offensive Player of the Week, NFC Offensive Player of the Week in Eli Manning's career, the leader among quarterbacks was Drew Brees with 23. Rodgers had 17. Russell Wilson and Cam Newton had it 9 times. Matt Ryan 8. Brett Favre, again, this is the back end of his career. Brett Favre had it 7 times. Vic 6. Kurt Warner, this does not include Kurt Warner's 2 MVP seasons. He had it 5 times, as did Tony Romo. Kirk Cousins, Eli, and Dante Culpepper had it 4 times. So Eli Manning won NFC Offensive Player of the Week in his own
once
career
every 4 years,
less times than Kurt Warner did after Kurt Warner's MVP.
That almost feels like if the only statistical category you ever lead the NFL in is negative, and you were undoubtedly the 3rd best quarterback out of your draft class, and nobody in their right mind would pick you as a top 5 quarterback of your era, and your statistics aren't really that impressive in the grand scheme of things. It almost sounds like, Jack, what you're suggesting is it's pretty ridiculous that he's a first ballot finalist. And then when you factor in the new math and the
ridiculous. It's worse than ridiculous. It is. I don't know how to say this without sounding too dramatic. They didn't do their jobs.
Not every quarterback that's on the ballot that has a name should be a first ballot finalist, or let alone a first ballot inductee. And there has to be some type of differentiation here for Eli Manning to get the same treatment that we know Drew Brees is going to get another year, and down the road Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Like, those are first ballot caliber guys. They belong in that discussion the first time. Like Eli Manning, like, when did anybody ever think of Eli as a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the NFC, let alone the NFL?
No, it sucks. And listen, Gary Myers, you seem like a nice guy, dude. And I respect the degree to which Gary Myers goes for his players. I respect it to a degree only because, like, that's also not what your position as selector is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be about just like hammer the home team. I mean, his arguments are going to be that he had, that Warren, I almost said Kevin Warren. His arguments are going to be that he won 2 Super Bowls and had 2 Super Bowl MVPs. Well, the other guys with 2 Super Bowl MVPs thrash him in every other category. He's going to say that, Warren Moon was also about 500 or maybe a 500 quarterback. Warren Moon thrashes him in every other category. He's going
In a
to
different
say,
era.
Correct.
Yeah.
Warren Moon also wasn't allowed to play quarterback in the NFL for 6 years and still
That's right.
finished third in his career in passing yards. He retired third in NFL history in passing yards, fourth in touchdowns, and he lost his first 6 seasons because NFL owners wouldn't let him play quarterback. What else is Gary Myers going to say? He's going to say, well, he beat Tom Brady and Bill Belichick twice in the playoffs. So did Joe Flacco. I recognize that those didn't come in the Super Bowl because they were in the same conference, but Joe Flacco beat the Patriots twice, once en route to his own championship. I mean, if you want to say yeah,
the 2 Super Bowl MVP talk, we talked about this the other day, Jack. I got to put this out there.
Yeah, it's weird.
Not every Super Bowl MVP to me is a real oh my God MVP. Every year there's a Super Bowl MVP, and a lot of times it's by default. And when I look at a situation where the story of that first Super Bowl against the, at the time, undefeated Patriots was not Eli Manning. It was about 2 things. It was about the Giants' defensive front 4 causing all types of havoc, which to me means that Justin Tuck maybe should be the MVP. Or if you really want to get technical, the other thing we remember from that game is David Tyree's helmet catch. If your Hall of Fame case is contingent upon, frankly, 2 spectacular all-time Super Bowl catches, one by David Tyree and one by Mario Manningham, you probably don't have much of a Hall of Fame resume. And when I hear about, well, he was a Super Bowl MVP twice and he beat him twice, yeah, you look at that. The second Super Bowl performance, Eli was better. I give him some dap there, but I think even then they still only scored 21 points. The first one, they scored 17 points, and if I recall correctly, they only had 3 points going into the fourth quarter. This was not some incredible performance. And, you are a helmet catch away from, you don't even have that to talk about. Then what the hell are we talking about here? If Eli went in both Super Bowls and he put up the numbers like Nick Foles did a few years ago against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, different conversation perhaps, because you could say that is such an outsized all-time great performance against the GOAT coach, arguably. That's different. Eli had one okay game, one pretty good performance, saved by 2 spectacular all-time memorable Super Bowl catches. That does not a Hall of Fame resume.
No, it's it's too bad that voters are riding with this, and I hope that they leave him out of the top 7 because, as we've discussed, this is a year where you're at risk of having a 4-person modern class. That's my view. I think we're going to end up with a 4-person modern class. I know people have said, well, you don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Voters clearly don't know. They don't even know what has happened, much less what's going to happen. So,
I look at Eli. One last thing I want to say about this is you've got 15 slots there. And granted, you could say there's no other quarterbacks. But at some point in time, I know we already took care of them a couple of years ago. It sure would be nice, especially when you look at the way the game is played today. Eli Manning, what type of impact did he have? You can, however, point to Randall Cunningham and say he actually had some peak elite seasons that Eli Manning could only dream of with his dirt face. And you could point to the subsequent impact to the league, and you say, Randall Cunningham, at a minimum once in 20 years, deserves to be in the damn room and have a conversation about it. Now, I would put him in, others may not, but I think the fact that Eli Manning gets in the room on the first try and Randall can't in almost 20 years is obscene to me. Just obscene.
Criminal.
I would venture a guess to say criminal. Because here's the thing is he wasn't even the best quarterback in the 2000s in that division. That was Donovan McNabb. I'm sorry, I would take Donovan McNabb.
He's going to get in right away. You watch.
He's not going to get in. He's not going to get in this year.
I don't know. I think it's a 50-50 shot. I
think
that's where his support is right now. It's probably 50-50. Half are going to be on the Myers, the beat the GOAT twice, and the other half are going to be yeah, but he had 16 years of mediocre career.
Well, Gary also has to realize if he has to realize that this is a golden opportunity to get Eli in, because if it doesn't happen this year, then next year you have Breeze, and Rivers. Rivers isn't a first ballot guy either, but he muddies the waters for Eli because of things that he got and things that he did. So you've got those two quarterbacks coming on, and then you've got Roethlisberger, and shout out to Cam Newton. I know he's not going to get any love or whatever.
Matt Ryan too.
Those guys in 27. Then you have Brady and Matt Ryan in 28, and then you have some real true first ballot guys at other positions sprinkled in there: Gronk, J.J. Watt, Adrian Peterson. So this is really a golden opportunity for Eli to get in. As far as Gary Myers, I'm sure sees it, and maybe Bob Glauber as well. And what I do think is going to happen is that I don't think he has the votes to get in, but I do think he has 11 votes to knock out a fifth inductee. So I hope that they don't spend too much time talking about him, because it is a lost cause for this year. Not to mention that he doesn't hold up to the standard of first ballot quarterbacks.
Here's the way I would put it. Eli Manning would be towards or setting the floor of Hall of Fame quarterback. He just would. And he's Plunkett with more longevity in the regular season, but not a lot of success.
Yeah.
That's what Eli is. So it's crazy.
The
and
one
frankly,
thing I'll
if I
give
was
Eli,
the guy, go ahead.
No, go ahead, man. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I would think if you were in that process and you were like the Jets representative, you might spend more time pounding the table for somebody like a John Abraham than you would the Giants guy. Just saying.
Jeff, who are you suggesting is the Jets representative?
That would be Gary Myers, I believe. Am I correct?
What?
Yeah.
Are you sure? That can't be. He talks about the Giants all the time.
Yeah, it's a stunning bit of news, isn't it? Like it's like, I guess the book sales are better for the Giants than they are the Jets. I'm just saying.
There you go. All right. Well, that's all I have.
Yeah, so I guess look for us to do a follow-up to this in a few weeks' time. I'm looking forward to this. Guys, as always, thank you so much for being a part of this crew. Hope everyone here sort of enjoyed our transparent process of how we look at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Send us your feedback. Even if you think it's something we're doing wrong, we want to hear about it. We got thick skin. We can take it. Well, Jeff, I'm not sure about you, but
you're Canadian. I know you're not talking. You're so nice to everyone. What's this all about?
I try to be, even though I've been getting some more hate messages later, but that'll be for another time. But with that being said, wherever you are, wherever you may be, make today count, because it never comes again, unless time travel's true.
Even from the future 51st state of the United States, Canada?
Yeah, I heard that. Who knew? I mean, I guess I moved right in time, huh? I got a leg up on my Canadian counterparts. I knew what I was doing.
Welcome.
I appreciate it.
All right, guys. I got to jump.
See you, Jack.
All
All right. Later, boys.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy New Year.